Welcome to another Pitt post-game show here at the Petersen Events Center after the worst loss of the season. I'd say Noah Hiles.
You would say?
I would say.
I would think the numbers would say.
I would certainly say. What was the final score? 75-53?
I believe that was it.
75-53. Pitt lost bad there. But this was a really good Duke team that came in here. We'll break down all the good, the bad, and the ugly of this game and talk about where the Panthers can go from here. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go to Mike's Beer Bar today. You can experience one of their 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are local. 80 of those local beers are available on tap. You could probably drink all of them in the span of the time that Pitt lost this game and not be drunk enough to get through it. But in all seriousness, Noah, this was as bad as it got, but let's talk about some good that came from this game. What's your good?
My good was only 40 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. My good was Zach Austin. After it seemed like he was kind of going up and down.
Yeah,
this whole year.
Very much so.
He got shut out against North Carolina the last time we recorded a show in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Great effort against Louisville Saturday, and he was the best player on the floor for Pitt. This evening, 11 points, which was a team high. He also had 2 blocks, 2 steals. He was their best defender.
Yeah.
And, people will look at the box score. They see that he led the team with 11 points, and 11 points is good. But it's what he did on defense. He was really their only reliable defender, I thought, for what he played over 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So Zach Austin was my good. That's a guy that, he doesn't address Pitt's biggest area of need. But having a wing defender in this league where there are so many dominant wings, 2 of which we saw tonight, it's a plus. So I think when other areas perform better, Zach Austin's going to be even more valuable. I think that the ebbs and flows are becoming more steady. He's becoming a lot more consistent. So that's one good thing I took away. What about you?
My good is just that they had 13 steals. I'll get into the defense in a bit here, but and 13 steals was not indicative of good defense. I'm not saying that, but 13 takeaways there, and that was the only. I think that was like the only thing that they won statistically in this game. And I like if they can get that, you saw guys. Zach Austin had 2 of those steals. You saw guys able to poke the ball away, able to cause some turnovers. That was good, and that's fine. But I'm not going to dwell on that much because when you get whooped like this, there ain't much good to dwell on. But statistically, it's good that they produced that. Let's flow right to our bad, and I'll explain why the defense was still bad even with the 13 steals that they had. They were just out of position all night. And look, some of these shots, Duke was on fire. Like that is potentially a Final Four team that I would pick to maybe win in the Final Four with the way that they shot in this game. They were just hitting all their 3-pointers, but even when they weren't hitting their 3-pointers, they were just working Pitt over. They were getting easy looks inside. They were getting opposition, simple passing lanes that were just being created by them. They made Pitt look like the teams that Pitt were beating up on earlier this season, when they were doing things. And that's just shouldn't happen to this Pitt team. Now, I will say this, Pitt, started 2 freshman guards. You clearly still don't have a big man presence, but that when you see if your guards aren't hitting it, if Blake Hinson isn't hitting and your bigs can't stand up to guys like Kyle Filipowski, who is the best player in the ACC and maybe one of the best, and no doubt one of the best players in the country, you're gonna have losses like this, and your defense. And this Pitt's been a good defensive team for most of this season.
One of the best in the ACC.
One of the best in the ACC statistically. Everything that spans out for them to get whooped like this and to see the defense just get picked apart like that. That's something that can carry over if they do not cut it off right now.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and to harp on that, when it comes to defense, when it comes to rebounding, where they were outclassed. Where's the number I had? I believe it was 42-26 as one of the top 25 rebounding teams in the country. All the things we're talking about, they come down to effort.
Yeah.
It comes down to effort.
It's a minus 16 margin.
And Jeff Capel even hinted at this.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't call anyone out specifically, but when he talked about his team's effort, he said, I like the effort at the end from the team that was on the floor.
Yeah.
And who wasn't on the floor was Blake Hinson at that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't Ishmael Leggett either, who I think was on the bench for different reasons.
He's been injured.
Fede Federico wasn't on the floor at that time. Who was it? It was the 2 freshman guards.
Yep.
Guillermo, Zach Austin, and
was it Jorge?
Jorge or Will?
Or Will,
one of
yeah.
those 2. But it's not the guys who were starting
Right.
You know, I mean, it was one of them. It was Bub, but it's not the veteran players, the returners,
Yeah.
the guys who were supposed to establish this culture. Their effort wasn't being commended in a loss like this, and it kind of transitioning us over to the ugly Carter.
Yeah.
Which is this team's 1-4 in the ACC.
Yep.
It's 0-5 against quad one
Mm-hmm.
opponents. I know it's not February. It's still kind of early January, but we're past the halfway point in the season now. This was game, I believe, 16. So it's time to find an identity. It's time to win a big game. By this point last year, Pitt had beat Virginia.
Yep.
Pitt had beat North Carolina. Pitt had beat Northwestern.
A lot of confidence.
Pitt had beat NC State.
Yeah.
And while there were losses, don't get me wrong, and it also lost to Florida State by this time last year. And it also, fell to West Virginia, and it had the horrible showing in Brooklyn. I'm aware of all those things. That team was much further along. And while the tournament looks way, way, way down the road, but this team might be at risk of not having a winning season.
Yeah.
If this continues right now. And I didn't mean to steal your thunder, and we could talk more about it.
Yeah.
But that's ugly, because that was not the expectation for this team this year. And you can, look back on it on however things unfold moving forward. This could have been a rebuilding year, and I don't think that a losing season this year would derail the program as a whole. I think that you're going to have a lot of key pieces returning if you're able to retain them.
Yeah.
But it's a disappointment for where this group is at right now. It should not have this record with the talent that it has.
No, I agree. And I think you weren't going to win this game even with you. Duke brought its A game. And when Duke brings its A game, unless you are out of your mind and extremely and right up there with them in talent, you're not going to hang with them. So, but Pitt could have at least held in and made this a 15-point game where they got pulled away late on. And it's like, you know what? They had their best night. But this wasn't one of those games. What my ugly is that this season is at risk of spiraling out of control. But also because I don't think Pitt knows how to get to what it wants to do yet. And I thought that they were starting to figure that out when they were ending non-conference play, and when they beat Louisville last week. I was like, okay, there's something there over the weekend, and you could see the guards starting to understand where to go with the basketball. But then you see something like this, and it doesn't derail the season, but it derails all the sense of development, all the sense of what they're going. I was thinking about this after the game. It felt like this team was very Matt Canada-like on offense, where, for Steelers fans, you know what I'm talking about, where there were plays on the field, there were open receivers, but it was just like no one understood the point of it. Like, for example, we talked about this during the game. Blake Hinson, I don't think touched the ball in the first five minutes.
He did not take his first shot. His first shot came at the 5-minute mark.
That you can't have that when he's your star player
against the number 11 team in the country.
Right. You need to get him the ball, and it seemed like there wasn't a plan to get him the ball consistently or a plan to do anything. I think it was just like, hey, we're going to come out and create different things, but there needed to be a concrete, we're going to hit this, we're going to do that, and things have to follow. And listen, there were plenty of open shots they missed. Again, Bub Carrington, he may have hit some shots late in the game, but there were some open looks that were designed.
He still finished 4 of 16.
Right.
Yeah. And it should have been worse.
It should have been worse. And a lot of those were open shots. They weren't him taking rushed contested, like, don't take those kind of shot looks. They were, Duke a few times even said, go ahead, shoot that, and he missed it. You cannot have that from your star guard.
No, you can't. And you can excuse the Carrington because he shouldn't have to be
He shouldn't be lifting you up.
The most minutes now. He shouldn't be the guy taking the most shots now.
Should be Blake.
But it's other people who have not stepped up. I mean, Blake Hinson has not been what he was supposed to be.
Not for at least a couple weeks.
Really, since the West Virginia game.
Yeah.
Since his record-breaking effort, he has not been the same player. I think Canisius, he had a good second half, but since then he has not been the same player. Federico, the Twins, like I said, all of the returning guys. Yeah. It's hard to argue that any of them have taken a step forward this year.
That's a good point.
All of the newcomers have been the best players on this team up to that point. That's ugly.
Yeah.
Because what was supposed to be what made this team competitive was the lessons learned
from
last year's ride. How the Twins took what they learned in March, from that tournament experience
Yep.
and grew. And while they're better, I guess, they're nowhere near where they need to be.
I agree.
And Fede Federico has
Regressed.
Blake Hinson, I would say, is stagnant. He's the same player he was last year, in my opinion. He looked a lot better earlier in the year, but he's back to what he was last year. And, you know, this team, Carter, the first 5 minutes of the game, the offense ran through a guy making his second career start.
Yeah. Dalen
You
Lowe.
can't have that. And like I said, you know, Carrington wasn't great today, but he shouldn't be doing this much. He shouldn't have to, but he has to. So that's the problem. This team has no identity. It has no rhythm. It doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know who to lean on. It's kind of lost right now.
And that's where I'm at, Noah. I think that this is where Jeff Capel needs to step in and be like, y'all need to wake up and recognize how good you are, because I still think this Pitt team is talented. I still think this Pitt team can finish at or above 500 in the ACC if they play the way they're supposed to, not the way they're playing now. Like they will have a terrible year if they keep playing the way they have the last outside of the Louisville game, how they played against Syracuse, how they played here, how they played against North Carolina. Those are not winning efforts. They need to get back to playing like they know, like playing with confidence, playing with strength, swagger. And swagger. Exactly. Have some of that. This team's supposed to be about having fun. It's supposed to be about going out there and giving your best, and then everyone feeding off that. And Hubert Davis, North Carolina's coach, pointed this out. He said, "Listen, when Blake Hinson's hitting, all of them feed off of that. And Blake Hinson hasn't been hitting, and no one's been feeding off that. Now, Bob Carrington, he can create open looks. Jalen Lowe, he can create open looks, but they're not going to be the driving force of this team yet. Blake's got to step up and be that guy, even if you're not dropping 20 points a night. If you can hit just some of the key shots and let people feed off of you, everything starts to flow from there. But this is my challenge to Jeff Capel. It's right now, it looks like if Blake's not doing that, there is no flow. There is no coordinated, hey, we are going to get this play in this moment to get something to fall, to stop the bleeding, or to get a run going. They didn't have a run until the walk-ons came on for Duke. They didn't have back-to-back baskets in this game until that happened. That's where Jeff Capel has to wake up. Now, I know that there's people that tweet me after every loss. Jeff deserves to be fired. Jeff deserves to be fired. You don't fire ACC Coach of the Year after the season he had last year.
Brought in a top 25 recruiting class.
Right, like you just don't do that. But you do challenge him. You do just like, hey, Jeff, you got to be able to bounce back from this, and you got to find answers that are on like when I look on tape and I see, hey, Pitt's doing this better. That needs to be seen after a game like this. And they have a game against Syracuse. They have a whole week off. They get to play right here again. This is the perfect opportunity to beat a team that you should have beaten on the road the last time. You had them where you want them, and you let them go. You got to beat them, because if you don't beat them, guess who you play again? This team that you just got beaten by, and you're at their home court,
the hardest
Duke.
Place to win in the country.
You are asking to do a lot in that situation, so they need to find it's and Jeff Capel, I love this that he said this. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry, but I asked him, is this a game where you burn the tape? Because a lot of coaches will say when you get this kind of a beating, you can't learn from this. You know what? We're focusing on ourselves. We're not turning on this tape. Jeff said no. I'm a guy that believes you learn from everything. He's like, and he said his dad, who they honored during this game, he said his dad said, sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. And today we were the bug. And you got to be able to step up and learn from what made you the bug in this instance. If Pitt can do that and create tangible learning things in their next game against Syracuse, that'll be a step forward. If they do not, this season could spiral way out of control. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. I mean, I'm glad you included that. I got nothing else to add on what was just that looked like a loss that would occur pre-tournament era Pitt.
Yeah.
That was a 2021, 2022.
I haven't covered a game this bad since that.
And they lost by a lot of points in games last year. They got blown out by West Virginia.
Right.
They got blown out by Michigan. They got blown out by this same Duke team.
In the tournament.
In the tournament, in the ACC tournament 10 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, even in those battles, there was more fight. There was more continuity. There was more of a plan.
Yeah.
This looked nothing like last year.
Exactly.
So, that's all I got. You got anything else?
Just that I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they take this week off. I'm going to be very intrigued to see if we get an availability with the team at the end of the week or right before the Syracuse game to get to hear what has been their focus, because it can't just be, well, we just need to get back to being us. And that is part of it. You can't overcomplicate things, but there needs to be a charge there. And like we thought, we said multiple times this year, Blake Hinson was stepping up and saying the right things as a leader. He needs to be a leader in moments like this and pick them up out of these depths. And that's the stuff that can save a season.
And this week off could not have come at a better time.
I agree.
Jeff would not admit that when I asked him it, but you're 1-4. You have a huge stretch where you're going to play Syracuse, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Miami in the next 2 weeks. You need to win 3 of those games if you have any hope in being, even in the mix for a tournament spot. And so you get a week off. You get Ishmael Leggett some rest.
Yeah.
You maybe figure some things out. But that's all we got. 15 minutes is the most you're going to get on a recap for a 20-plus point toss out of us. For Chris Carter, I'm Noah Hiles signing off, saying we will see you next time here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel and podcast network.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.